Wait, you're a Bears fan and you're not subscribed to my channel? Before this video starts, make sure to 1. Hit the subscribe button below to catch all Bears content right here on this podcast. 2. Hit the bell notification because you, my friend, are a diehard Bears fan. And 3. Like this video and tell all the Bears fans you know about the channel. Alright, that's better. Now that you're actually subscribed to the channel, make sure to bear down and enjoy this video.
You're listening to Geek on the Mic. Geek on the Mic. A podcast all about the Chicago Bears. This podcast starts right now. Geek on the Mic.
Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Geek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. Before we get this episode started, make sure you hit that subscribe button below and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at Geek on the Mic. Share this podcast with all the Bears fans that you know, and you'll also be able to listen to this episode of Geek on the Mic on Apple Podcasts. So, we have a lot of Bears news out of Halas Hall today, and it's not very good. It's not looking promising. Obviously, everyone knows that it is a circus right now in Chicago and at Halas Hall. But let's get right to it. The Chicago Bears are losing a couple of position coaches, a couple of coordinators, some big pieces to the team, and it is truly heartbreaking. So first of all, Rodgers is leaving the Bears. The D-line coach, Rodgers, is leaving Chicago to become the Los Angeles Chargers defensive coordinator. This is a huge loss for the simple fact that, to me, and probably to a lot of Bears fans, we're probably all in agreement here, is that Rodgers was actually high up on our board to become the new DC in Chicago and replace Chuck Pagano. But obviously the Bears are kind of messing around and interviewing different people to make sure they get it right. And Rodgers said, you know what, deuces, I'm going to go be the DC for the Chargers and be under Staley, which they were both under Vic Fangio when Vic Fangio was the DC in Chicago. So it makes sense. The move makes sense. I wish him the best. But how do you guys feel about Rodgers leaving? I'm not too happy about it. Obviously, Rodgers would have been a pretty good DC for us because he knows the players. He gets the most out of his players. And look what he's done with the defensive line, even with players like Eddie Goldman opting out. Even with sometimes Akeem Hicks not in the game when he gets injured. He has made the most out of that defensive line, and I'm truly going to miss him, but I wish him the best. So comment down below and let me know how you're feeling about Rodgers leaving Chicago to become the new DC in Los Angeles. Next, we have Dave Ragone, the passing game coordinator for the Chicago Bears. He is leaving to become the OC for the Atlanta Falcons. So once again, Dave Ragone there was a couple opportunities there, hit or miss, where he could have been the Bears OC, but they kept moving him up slowly, and eventually I think he would have probably got there to be an OC for the Bears, but obviously we're too late, and he is now taking his talents as the OC for the Atlanta Falcons. And this next one, Charles London, running backs coach, is leaving to become the QB's coach for the Falcons. So we lost 2 of our coaches to the Falcons, so thanks a lot, Falcons. I hope you guys enjoy them. These guys are big pieces, and it's super hard to find quality coaches like these guys. They've been nothing but good to the Chicago Bears, and it's going to be hard to replace them. Obviously, when you replace guys like this, it's probably going to be more of like in-house, so people are probably just going to get moved up and kind of shuffle around in Halas Hall and for the Chicago Bears. But Matt Nagy now has to find a DC, a D-line coach, a passing game coordinator, and a running backs coach. So let me ask you this. Who would you like to see replace these guys? So obviously Rodgers, Dave Ragone, and Charles London. Who do you want to see? Obviously, I don't really know. I don't know who is going to replace these guys. They're hard guys to replace. But like I said, I wish them nothing but the best. So, I kind of wanted to come on here as well and talk about the DC options. Who is going to replace Chuck Pagano as the new Bears defensive coordinator? This is a huge deal. Obviously, in the second half of the season, the Bears defense kind of took like a little slump, and I think it had a lot to do with Chuck Pagano's very boring vanilla defense. That's what I like to call it. To me, we need a guy with some juice, a guy with some grit, the guy that's going to get the most out of these players. So I have 4 guys on the list that I think would fit the role and fit the bill for the next Bears DC. I guess my concern is you haven't been hearing a lot. We've interviewed a couple of guys. Yes, we interviewed a couple of guys. But do you guys feel that the Chicago Bears job, like any coordinator job with the Bears, there's a lot of coaches that don't want to come to Chicago because they know that this is Matt Nagy's and Ryan Pace's possibly last season. So they know if they fail, they're probably going to be out after 1 year. So why leave their current situation if the Chicago job is only going to possibly be for 1 year? So I kind of agree with that. It's like, I don't think I would leave a position I'm in to possibly get fired after 1 year with the job. So here we go. Obviously, when I'm going through these, I want you guys to tell me below what you think about these DCs, and also tell me below who you want the Bears' new DC to be. So the first one I have is Sean Desai. He is the safeties coach for the Bears right now. Obviously, Jay Rodgers would have been on this list, but obviously Jay Rodgers is now the DC for the Chargers, so he's off the list now. So Sean Desai, he's a safeties coach. He's been with the Bears since 2012. The guys respect him. He knows the players. I feel like the players will buy into him. There's a lot of talk going around the NFL that he is the next up-and-comer, almost kind of like how Brandon Staley was when he left. They feel like he is the next one to be a really, really good young defensive coordinator. So why not just move him up? Don't even interview all these other guys. Just bring this guy up. Players already know him. He already knows the system. There was also a while back where Vic Fangio was actually trying to take Sean Desai with him to Denver. We blocked it. So if that tells you anything about how much the Bears actually like this guy, there goes your answer. My only question for Sean Desai, if he does get the DC job with the Chicago Bears, how will he handle the first year actually calling the plays for the defense? And I guess that's a transition for all these new young guys, new DCs, first-time DCs. How will they handle play calling for the first year? I'm not really concerned about him. I think the players would buy in to him, and I think that would be a nice little, hopefully, jumpstart for the Chicago Bears defense. So Sean Desai is my first one. Second one on my list is James Bettcher. James Bettcher, he has been a lot of experience as a DC. The Bears have already interviewed him, so I guess that's a plus. There's also been rumors about last season he actually was kind of consulting with Chuck Pagano. So there's already a little bit of relationship with the Chicago Bears and James Bettcher. So the Bears would stick with the 3-4 defense under him. So keeping the same defense, I guess, is good for the Chicago Bears, keeping things the same. The only issue about him as the Bears DC is when he was with the Giants and the Cardinals, it didn't end well. There were stretches with the Cardinals where they looked pretty good. I'm not going to lie. They looked pretty good. But at the very end, everything kind of broke down. So this one is a hit or miss for me. I wouldn't be mad, but I necessarily wouldn't be happy either. So I just don't want the Chicago Bears to rush into signing a DC, and I think that's why it's taking them so long, because they're trying to find the right guy, and to me, I respect that. So take your time, make sure this is the right DC, because this defense does have a good couple solid years left in them. So as long as you get the right guy in charge of that defense, I think the defense will be really, really good for the Bears. My third guy on the list is George Edwards. He was the Vikings DC from 2014 to 2019 when they had that very, very good stretch of very good defense in Minnesota. Obviously, people would probably give Mike Zimmer the credit for those defenses, but he was still involved with that defense. He has a linebacking background, so he got the most out of guys like Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks. So obviously, those are two very good young linebackers. So if hired, do you guys think Edwards would be able to get the most out of Danny Trevathan and Roquan Smith? Roquan Smith has a possibility to get even better. And if you bring a guy in with the linebacking background like George Edwards, wouldn't that be scary to see how good or how much better Roquan Smith can get? And obviously, I said this in a previous video, the backups behind Danny Trevathan and Roquan Smith kind of scare me. Would George Edwards be able to come in and basically give a boost to not only the linebacking room to make them stronger, but the whole defense. He does run a 4-3, which isn't a deal breaker to me. You know, obviously we're a 3-4, so you want to keep things the same, but wouldn't it be interesting if on certain situations they switched it up, you know, and that's not an impossible thing to do. If you, for maybe pass rushing downs, you switch to a 4-3, but you can also keep your 3-4. So I don't think it would be a deal breaker. I'm not sure what you guys think about that, but to me, I don't think it'll be a deal breaker. So the last person on my list is Jonathan Gannon. He is the Colts DB coach. He has specialized with DB. So with Edwards, he specialized with linebackers. With Gannon, he is specialized with the DBs. He has had names like Trey Waynes, Xavier Rhodes, and Harrison Smith. All those guys are pretty good DBs, so that's a pretty impressive list. It's clear that the players that he has coached, they buy into his system. They love playing for him. And he also runs a 4-3. So I actually like Jonathan Gannon. I think this would be it would be a great signing for Chicago if they did consider going with him, because I love the fact that his players are buying into him. I think we need a coach like that. I think our defense they're kind of in this weird slump right now where they need a guy to come in and take charge of the defense, and someone that they can look up to. And if he's able to come in and the defense buys into him, maybe we'll see the 2018 Bears defense again. You never know. So obviously, like I said, him and Edwards won a 4-3. Bettcher and Desai would probably stick with the 3-4. So I want to ask you guys this. Would you rather see the Bears run a 3-4 or a 4-3? Leave a comment below. Let me know. And also, who do you want the Bears' new DC to be? It's a simple question. Let me know in the comments down below. But before we end this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button below. Make sure you hit the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at Keek on the Mic. Make sure you share this podcast with all the Bears fans you know. I truly feel that if my podcast gets out there, more Bears fans know about me, this podcast can go somewhere. So spread the love for me. Let them know what's up with Keek on the Mic. You will also be able to listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you rate and review that podcast. That'll be much appreciated. But other than that, I'll be back with an all new Bears video next time right here on Keek on the Mic. Thanks, guys.
Now this is a podcast all about Bears. You either cheering for this team or just pulling your hair. I like to take a minute, just sit right back and tell you how I became the #1 Bears fan. That boy is Benny Hunter. Keek on the mic, Keek on the mic, Keek on the mic, Keek on the mic. People, this the intro. Sacramento, California, born and raised. And Antelope is where I spend most of my days. Talk bad about my team, you must be a clown. This is Keek on the mic, so you know you better bear down.